Well, hi, Shawn. Thank you so much for coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am thrilled that you were on the show today.
I'm happy to be here and honored to be your first male guest.
I know. And it just so happens it is my son Sean's seventh birthday, the day of recording. So it's just meant to be.
So exciting.
Sean, you've been very understanding. We're recording this in January when there have been snow days and low temperatures. And I think my kids since December 20th have had 6 days of school total.
Oh my goodness.
So it's been a little crazy, but thank you for sticking with it. And I would love it if you could introduce yourself and tell us about you and your family, a little bit about your business, and then anything you like to do for fun.
All right. My name is Shawn Lemon, and I'm the founder of the Digital Organizer. And I live in the Nashville, Tennessee area in Franklin with my wife, Madeline, my 2.5-year-old Nico, actually soon to be 3-year-old Nico. Um, and it's a total blast living with them and being with them. And just this phase of life is just a blast. Can be overwhelming at times, especially when I work from home. But yeah, my wife stays home and raises our son, and we just have a good time here with family close by. So my business started out of the Apple Store. So I worked there for 7 years and I taught people how to use tech. And I found that a lot of people were really overwhelmed by the mess and they needed some help getting on top of it. It wasn't enough just to show how features worked, which is what the job was at Apple. And so no one else was really going to people's houses or into their businesses and helping them get organized and figure out how to actually use these tools really well. So I started doing it, and I've been doing it for 11 years now, full time. And yep, have built a little bit of a team, and that's a little bit about the business. Lastly, what I like to do for fun is mostly pottery. So I have a shed behind my house where I've got a pottery wheel and just about everything except a kiln. And so that's where I spend most of my free time at night. And then on the weekends, I like to ride motorcycles.
Oh, so cool. I'm like, what do I do on the weekends? That's cool. Nothing as cool as pottery and motorcycles. I'll tell you that. Oh my gosh. Well, that is awesome. And I know that for me, I've always been like very organized,
Yeah.
obviously, and then going into like the decluttering and helping people
Hmm.
mostly with their physical spaces.
Right.
But I will tell you that I have struggled myself with finding like digital organization systems that work for me
Hmm.
because it's just relentless.
Yeah.
Like it's not like generations past for business where you send a fax or send, like send a letter. Like
Right.
everything like is just the expectations have completely shifted and the deluge of what is coming at us all the time is extremely overwhelming, and I don't think our brains have adapted or evolved to be able to deal with this much information.
No, not at
So
all.
I'm excited to jump in. I did want to ask you though, I'm sure Nico is wonderful and adorable, and I'm just curious if you and your wife have experienced any overwhelm when you are having to raise a toddler, maybe about like how routines are working or not working, or maybe just like the toy room is exploding, or have you had any moments of overwhelm that you could share with our listeners since we are all about overcoming the overwhelm here?
Yeah. Well, a lot of overwhelming moments, especially in that first year. And that was, I mean, really family coming in to rescue us and help when we were going through tongue tie and then feeding aversions and all of those sorts of things where um they're just out of our control. Like I can't make the child eat. All it can do is just offer and be respectful. And what we ended up having to do was find a coach and to help us with the whole feeding aversion thing. And actually, that's how we found out that it wasn't indigestion. It was this thing. And he was like, "Hey, you've pressured me to eat. Thank you, lactation consultant." Just like you have to get more in him. And so it's like,
Yeah.
have a little bit more. Will you eat some more? And then finally he said no. And it was just so bad we had no idea what to do. It was one of the darkest points of our lives, just trying to keep this kid alive.
Hmm.
And luckily, my wife found this company based out of Australia, and we hired him. And this wonderful patient woman coached us through it, watched the videos of us feeding him, helping coach us to know what to do in that situation when we were just completely emotionally a wreck. And it was really life saving.
Wow. We had tongue tie issues also, but no feeding aversions. And gosh, talk about overwhelmed, and I'm sure just feeling completely hopeless because it's like you
Oh my
said, you
gosh,
can't
yeah,
force your kid to
yeah.
eat. Okay, so you are the guru, the expert when it comes to all things digital organizing, which, like I said, I have attempted different iterations of things that work for me and things that don't. But there's also a lot of conflicting advice I feel out there, especially like generationally. I think about my parents, like the
Yeah.
baby boomers, and
Hmm.
then more of the generation since. And when it comes to like physical documents and like what we actually need, the opinions are very different. You ask my dad, who still prints out everything and still
Hmm.
keeps every single email
Yeah.
physically and not organized, I will say. If you're listening, Dad, I love you, but come on. So if you could talk to us a little bit about like what are those physical documents we actually have to have, which isn't like boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff, and which ones can we just have electronically? I'd love to start there before
Hmm.
we kind of move to the actual storage and organization of the electronic documents.
Yeah. There's not a ton that we really have to keep. There's so many different ways that we could back up our stuff. And really, it comes down to what's your comfort level.
Mhm.
And while I know that I can get rid of all the tax documents and I don't need to keep physical copies because I've either scanned them or I downloaded them digitally. My bank has been sending me the 1098s and, all of the 1099Ks and everything. And sometimes I'm getting the paper ones. I still like to have them. It just
Mhm.
makes me feel safe by having those documents just in case, even though I've got backups and all the things. So I keep that, birth certificates, marriage certificates, um, certain vehicle documents, but the majority of it I just throw away now. I go and get my oil changed, and I like to keep those records. So when I sell my car, it's like I've got all the records, and here you go, and I get good value from it that way. So I snap a picture of it, I put in the date, what it was, the vendor, and there we go, I'm done with it, and then I toss the receipt. So you know, there's just so little if you've got a good system and you're putting it online or putting
Yeah.
it at least digitally on your computer.
I'm curious for you because I have a lot of clients that deal with sentimental items,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is paper. And what I typically do, I'm going to just share a little bit of what I do in the
Yeah.
process, just because that might help people too. But for like my kids' artwork, for example, if it
Mhm.
has their handprint or something representative of the actual size, then I
Yeah.
have been keeping a limited amount of that. But otherwise, I have been scanning. I find that the iPhone does that really easy within
Hmm.
Notes. And so I don't really keep that. And then when it comes to even cards, like my husband gives me an anniversary card, then I'm just scanning the portion that has the nice things that he said about me.
Hmm.
And then I get rid of the physical. But people really like have a hard time with the physicality of sentimental things. And I'm wondering what you do and what you recommend that people do when it comes to more of those sentimental papers.
You know what? I've got a spot that I dump the cards into that have something meaningful written in them. If it's
Mhm.
not meaningful, it goes. So I saved that. I haven't even thought about just scanning them and keeping those digitally because it's just hadn't crossed my mind. It's like there's certain things digitally that wouldn't cross your mind. Um, but other things as far as kid stuff goes, I'm not there yet. I've got a few things and we've got them physically, but I love that idea of scanning them and and then having them digital, and then
Yeah.
keeping the ones where, yeah, footprint, handprint, things like that just show that. I mean, that's wonderful. So keeping that is cool. The one thing that I wouldn't do is store it in notes,
Mm.
because what if you decide you don't want to use Apple anymore?
I'd have to get a divorce because
Yeah.
my husband will only use Apple products, but keep going.
Yeah, I hear you. And I used to work at the Apple store. I'm totally there with you. But you might find that you would rather use a different app instead for
Mm.
all of your notes. And how are you going to get all of that information out of there? It's not very easy. So
Mm.
since you're on a Mac, there's something really cool that you can do, and you can just right click in a folder, any folder, or on your desktop, and you can say import from my phone. And it opens up the phone. You just hover over top of it, snap the picture, and it makes a file instead of putting it in your notes app.
Oh, great. Oh, I
Yeah.
love learning new
So
things.
now you just file it away as any other digital document, just in your
Hmm.
filing system. That way you can move it from place to place. Because I was hardcore Apple and storing all of my stuff in iCloud,
Hmm.
but then as I built my business and I wanted everything working together easier, my wife and I love using Google Docs and Sheets. So I moved all of that stuff over, and it was so simple to do because it's just dragging from one place to another, and everything shows up there. Whereas Notes apps don't do that.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
great. Well, I will
Yeah,
take a look at that. And you brought up kind of my next question was about the electronic storage process. Now, you were talking
yeah,
a little bit about like naming conventions and why
hmm,
that's really important,
yeah,
but also being able to share. We, not shockingly, have Macs and use those. And so we do have some shared folders specifically for taxes. So, like, if I
hmm,
have a medical receipt, I scan it, I put in that folder, which my husband also
yep.
accesses is able to access because we were using Evernote, but then the cost ended up being kind of cost prohibitive, and we were like, yeah, we're gonna try to do something different.
Yeah,
But I'm curious if you could talk first about sort of the naming conventions and then
yeah.
also how you're able to easily share with your wife those important documents.
Yeah. So when it comes to naming conventions, I usually put the date in the document. So I always start with the year, and I put 2025, and
Hmm.
then for mine I use a dash, and then I put 01 for January, dash 22 for the 22nd, and when you start your naming convention with the date in that format and putting the zeros in, if we're in January, then when you do that and you organize your files alphabetically, they're organized chronologically. So it's very easy to see if a medical record is out of date. So if you're taking a picture of your child's eye prescription, then you can know which one is current and which one isn't by a simple glance. And if you want to delete those and purge, you know which ones you could delete. If you want to keep them for records, you could just create an archive folder in that child's folder and then dump it in there. And so
Hmm.
the rest of the naming convention is dash category dash description. So in this case, eye prescription and then Dr. Motley
Yeah.
or whatever that is. So another one for taxes, I don't put the full date in because the only thing that's relevant is the year. So that's going to
Mhm.
be 2025 dash 1099K dash Stripe. And that's a 1099 from
Okay.
Stripe.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And I love that it's not like super long
It's not.
because it's just for that searchability,
Yeah.
aspect.
But
And
you
then when it
can make
comes,
it
oh, go
long
ahead.
too. You can
Mhm.
make it long too. Like the the descriptor can be as short or as long as you need, unless, in Windows you do have character limits.
Hmm.
But you can add a lot in there. That way you can find it easily through a search.
Right. Okay. And then when it comes to sharing the folders, do you
Mhm.
just make it whatever it is, like taxes or 2024 taxes, a shared folder with your wife, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I used to share them individually, but it was hard for her to find because she's just not as much of a Google user as I am.
Hmm.
So as much as we like Google Docs and Sheets, you know, it's she's not in it day in and day out.
Yeah.
I am. So what I flipped it around is just said, let's put all of these important files in a folder called family. And I share that one folder with her. And then I saved that at the top level of Google Drive. So it's very easy for her to get to.
Right.
And so she can always see here's where the health records are, financials, important docs, etc.
Okay, very
Yeah.
cool.
So
I
you don't have to
have,
share individual, group them
right.
together and share one folder.
Okay. I do have one question just as
Hmm.
far as like notes is concerned, because
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing and I've been telling kind of my clients about what I do. One
Hmm.
of the things that I do like about it is that you can use tags.
Uh-huh.
So if I want to search something by a particular tag, then I can do that. But I don't think that that's the case, correct me if I'm wrong, for Google Drive. So is
You
that just,
can.
you can?
Google
Okay,
Drive
see?
does have tags.
I'm learning so many things.
Yeah.
This is
I've
fantastic.
I find that I don't usually, well, I don't ever do them because my
Hmm.
name is descriptive enough.
Yeah.
So like the tag is in the name,
Hmm.
but I really group things together based on context. So just like in a physical space, you're grouping or say we'll take my pottery for example, there are defined stages. It's wet. I need to weigh it out, cut it, wedge it, prepare the clay to go on the wheel. And that's a set of tools. And then on the wheel, there's a set of tools for wet work and then dry. And then
Right.
another place for blazing.
Hmm.
So defined spaces for it. And I want all of those tools grouped together.
Hmm.
So, I'm not going to store my notes in a notes app and then the contract for my client in a different place. I
Right.
want the notes, the contract, images, any files that were created all in one place. Same thing for podcast and marketing. Everything goes together. So it's very simple to find what you're looking for. And there's not a ton of overlap. So it's
Hmm.
much easier to find when you have a very focused file system.
Yeah, and I was just thinking because of the searchability
Hmm.
being so good, I find, and my husband just loves me so much, but he's always like, you're always putting bags and bags and folders and folders. And,
Yep.
the way that my brain works is like, this goes in this folder and this goes
Hmm.
in this folder.
Hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case in digital world because
Right.
of the searchability. So and my husband will listen to this and start laughing, but what, how many levels of folders is too much? Like you were mentioning the family folder, which is that high
Hmm.
level one that you're sharing.
Hmm.
But besides that, are there subfolders or no subfolders? I'm curious to know how you do that.
Yes, there are, and I'm constantly trying to reduce them. So my goal is three folders deep,
Mm,
or less. So, and then another layer deeper than that would be the archive.
yeah.
So, for example, my clients folder, because we primarily work with clients, is at the very top level. So you just open up Google Drive and you double click on clients and you're in there. And all you're seeing are active clients,
Hmm.
but there's a folder in there that's inactive. And so when we finish a project, we just drag it up into finished or in inactive clients, and then they're not sorted except by name. So it's all alphabetical. And then there's, the hundreds of client or folders just sitting in there. And I can always search Emily and it's going to pull up your
Hmm.
folder and I can just promote it up to the top level. So with an archiving strategy like that and pairing a naming convention where you see the date for relevance and you also see the category right at the beginning, then we don't need to use as many folders. We can have a list of things. Now, some people just don't like seeing a giant list, in which case, create a folder if you want to. But if when you're working with it in a team environment or with other people and they just won't do it because it's double click, double click, double click, double click.
Yeah.
Oh wait, let me go back three levels and because it's not in here. That makes it really hard to navigate. And so especially when we're working with business, it's how shallow can we make this folder structure and obvious and then have an archive a layer deeper.
Yeah. That is incredibly helpful. Thank you. Yeah, my husband is like, how many double clicks are you going to make me do?
Yeah.
So, I am throwing you for a loop because we had some topic ideas, and now I'm like, oh, what about this? What about this? And then
Oh,
my
go
brain's
for it.
going. Okay, good. Thank you. I get questions all the time about photos,
Yeah.
all the time. Now,
Hmm.
um, I personally every night go through and then I'm deleting the extra ones if there are. I've never had my kids like grab my phone and take 500 pictures, but
Hmm.
apparently this is like a thing.
Yeah.
But then I do back up to Google Photos, but only the ones that I want to go there. And then we have a shared family album that we share with our extended family, have since the kids were born.
Hmm.
So they can have like the highlights of the kids' photos. So I know though that everyone seems to be drowning in photos on their
Yeah.
phone, and they're also like, I don't want to pay all this money to, whatever,
Hmm.
Google Photos or Apple Photos for all this
Yeah.
backup.
Yeah.
So, Shawn, what do we do with the hundreds and thousands of photos that are on everyone else's phone, but not mine?
Yeah. Um, since we're talking Apple, I would say pay for the storage for Apple and allow it to be easy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we have money for, and this is why we pay for things. Is we're paying for value. So I get not wanting another subscription, and I'm always trying to avoid them as much as possible. But there are certain things that I feel are totally justified and give enough value for me to pay for it. And easy syncing between my Mac and my iPhone and my iPad, I take a picture and it just shows up everywhere. It's really nice. And so, if you're Apple based, I think iCloud is a fantastic choice. Now, um, I used to do photo organization. I don't anymore, but I did in the past. I've worked with a number of people um, with photos, and I've only seen photos disappear from iCloud once, and it was because of corruption on that iMac. Ended up deleting, and then it screwed up the library online,
Mm.
and the guy was able to get a hold of Apple. They got connected with the engineers at iCloud, and they were able to restore everything, and it was totally fine. So I've I've never actually seen um, something wrong with iCloud
Mhm.
that hasn't been able to be solved. So I feel really comfortable with that. For a while, I was backing up to Google Photos, but I just stopped because I don't like the confusion of is it here or is it there?
Right.
And unless it's very clear, this is strictly a backup. But if you do that, Google Photos says that it's going to back up your photos in an optimized way for free. But they're not telling you they're backing up your videos and that those videos are going to take up storage. And if you
Yes.
want full quality images, which who doesn't, um, you're going to have to pay for that as well. Or if you go over that
Hmm.
15 gig threshold that they give you for free.
Yeah.
So then you do have to pay for it. So I like it as simple as possible. I'm not backing up to Google Photos anymore. I actually purged it all. I don't let Dropbox do it either.
Mhm.
All of the cloud services are trying to get you to back up your photos to their service because you'll immediately run out of free space and need to start paying. And then Dropbox, they actually rename all of the photos based on the date. So then if you try and use a deduplication app, it can throw it for a loop and then you're stuck and then you're totally afraid to delete that
Yeah.
stuff and you're trapped.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, it
Okay,
made
so
me
we're
so
not
mad.
we're not doing Dropbox
Yeah.
for sure. Just the sheer amount of, so we're doing the photos of the kids and
Hmm.
maybe the screenshots and whatever. What is your personal curation system for just like I took a bunch of photos this
Yep.
week. What do I do? Now that we know kind
Mhm.
of like the long-term storage, just the overwhelm of the sheer volume, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So I wish there was a way that we could rate photos like we used to,
Hmm.
because I could just, hit reject or whatever, or do different stars. We can't do it anymore. So my workaround is to favorite the ones that I really love. And then I go back to the main grid. I hit the
Hmm.
select button and I highlight everything that's not favorited and I delete them.
Oh,
And then
cool.
I highlight all of the ones that are favorited and unfavorite them, um, except if they really are favorites. Then they stay with the heart.
That's good curation. I
Hmm.
like that. Definitely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, the fact is, I've just seen so many people with tens of thousands and in
Hmm.
some cases hundreds of thousands of photos, and it's so much of it is 50 shots of the same
Yeah.
thing. It's like, oh, I don't know which one. Well, when you go and look through your photos, it's overwhelming, and it
Hmm.
just makes things hard to find. So at some point we have to start being ruthless about what we keep. It's too easy. They make it too easy
Yeah.
on purpose. We already talked about this. So we need good hygiene, and it's just becoming really overwhelming, and people are hitting that critical mass faster and faster, or more people are.
Yeah, and so I always say, like, if you're used to scrolling Instagram in bed before you go to
Hmm.
sleep, just go through the photos of the day, first,
Yeah,
and
I love
just
that.
trying to kind of have some sort of habit around it. And then also, from like a gratitude standpoint, then you can kind of look and be like, oh, what happened today? And then kind of
Hmm.
have that reflection of on the day.
Yeah,
So making that a habit. The only, I guess, the last topic I want to dive into would be email, which I know is a
yeah.
beast.
Hmm.
But again, we're getting the deluge of emails. I already tell my folks unsubscribe from as
Yeah.
many things as possible, but especially the retail emails, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
But when it comes to kind of managing your inbox, I know people have different inbox number comfort
Hmm.
thresholds.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mine for my Gmail inbox is 50 because that's like what you can view. And then I'm always like, if it's over 50, I need some dedicated time to go through this and like,
Yeah.
deal with it. Obviously, there's the great searchability functions and everything, but people feel like they're drowning. And then when it comes to like attachments, like, oh, okay, someone sent me, their headshot. So,
Hmm.
do I need to move that to my electronic system, like instead of keeping it in the
Yeah.
inbox? So, any email tips that you can provide to our
Yeah.
overwhelmed moms out there?
Yes. So first off, give yourself permission to declare email bankruptcy and say, I'm going to pick a cutoff date and archive everything past that date. We don't
Yeah,
have to delete it. You can still search for it because you're not going to browse through 12,000 emails to find what you're looking for. You're going to search. So let's just get it out of the inbox. Now, why don't we just do all of them? Well, you can, but I like to leave about 30 days in the inbox to process through and to find the subscriptions that you've received in the last 30 days. You're on more than that, but that's a
yeah,
fantastic starting point and makes it a manageable goal to go through and start unsubscribing. Now, I get a lot of kickback on this sometimes. It's, oh, I've tried unsubscribing, I've done it so many times and it doesn't work. It does work, as long as it's not real spam. If you're, if you're getting
yeah.
Rolex, or Viagra
Hmm.
emails, yeah, don't unsubscribe for those. That's going to add you to more lists. But Nordstrom, you can get off the list. But
Hmm.
you just may not realize that you're on 10 different lists from Nordstrom, and you need to let that page load and actually read it and unsubscribe from all. And just know Nordstrom may send their emails from Klaviyo, but then they've got some other system that they send these other marketing emails. And if it happens again, it might just be it's from a different system. You need to unsubscribe from it, just do it again.
Yeah.
And you really can cut this down because I've got a 20-year-old Gmail account that is perfectly usable
Hmm.
because I've just stayed on top of it. So I know unsubscribing works, and it works for our clients when you do it manually like this. So that slows the tide. Once you're done with that, go through and start deleting everything that you will never look at again. And this is just the 30-day window, remember. And then we're going to archive everything that has already been taken care of,
Hmm.
or we don't need to respond. Just, go ahead and archive those. And now what we're left with are the emails that you actually need to do something with.
Hmm.
So now what we need to do is triage. And the way people get to inbox zero is by either using a folder system to like deal with something later, or what we do is snooze it.
Mm.
So we look at the emails. If we can respond immediately and it's quick, just go ahead and do it, get it done. What we're left from there are things that we don't want to do right now, but maybe we can do in the afternoon or in the evening. So snooze it for later on in the day. Or maybe this is something, the type of activities I like to do on Thursday mornings because my son's, at a little preschool thing to be socialized with other kids since he's the only one right now. So he's over there in the morning. So we've got quiet time. So I'm going to reply to certain types or do certain types of tasks on Thursday morning. So
Mhm.
that's when I snooze it for. And the reason why I do that and why we recommend it versus using a folder system is so many people that work with us have ADHD.
Yeah.
And if it's out of sight, it's truly out of mind and you forget about it. And it's very easy to forget to go to this other folder that we need to process or do this week or whatever. So if it pops back in the inbox at the right time, it's the perfect cue to go ahead and get it done.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. And same thing in the physical realm as far as with ADHD clients and trying to figure out some sort of visual system that's going to
Yeah.
work for them.
Hmm.
So, oh, that's so helpful. Well, I really appreciate this. I totally geek out, as you can tell. I get super excited about
Love it.
all things digital organization. So, thank you so much, Sean, for coming on the show. And please let us know how we can connect with you and the best way that everyone can learn more, because I'm sure they're going to want to, because everyone feels like they're drowning in the photos and the
Yeah.
emails and the documents.
Totally. Well, go to thedigitalorganizer.com. And in the show notes, we're going to have a link. It's digitalorganizer.com/moms overcoming.
Mhm.
And I've got a little family organization guide. So getting calendars together for your family, sharing calendars, picking a folder system, talking a little bit about naming convention and
Mhm.
organization and how to approach getting on the same page in your household. And then from there, I'll send you some emails on how to do that email bankruptcy in Gmail to
Mhm.
say only archive after 30 days. I've got some other videos of like email automation and other things like that that I'm just going to give to you if you sign up for
Oh,
that free
thank
resource.
you.
And my unsubscribe button works. So if you get it and you're like, cool, but I don't want to hear from you anymore, then you just unsubscribe.
Oh, yes, definitely. I always say that too for my weekly email. I'm just kind of like, if this is not bringing value to your inbox, please,
Get
by
rid of
all
it.
means, go
Yep.
ahead and
Get rid
unsubscribe.
of it if it's not for
Oh,
you.
well, thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate that. And I'll make sure to have everything in the show notes for everyone. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.